Welcome back to the Bridge the Gap podcast. It's been a while.
It has. I'm Nikki. I'm a mental health nurse, therapist and co-director at Bridge the Gap.
My name's Jennifer Wyman. I'm an emotional literacy specialist and early years professional, and we've been in this line of work for quite a few years between us. It's been a while since we've done a podcast episode, and I remember the first podcast episode we recorded when you came back from maternity leave. I found the audio from it the other day, and it was really uncomfortable listening to it.
Oh, you were not in a great place.
No, it wasn't great. It never saw the light of day, and I don't think it ever will. But it feels nice to be back. We're in a good space, aren't we, in terms of everything that's happening at Bridge the Gap. And I know from the statistics that and the analytics that you guys are still listening to our old podcast episodes. So hopefully you're still finding them useful. What we wanted to talk to you a bit about today, though, was anger.
Yes. And children will feel angry. And that is predominantly the content of what we want to discuss, isn't it? So we have a webinar coming up as well on responding to anger. So do check that out. It's a topic that comes up often in our parenting sessions at Bridge the Gap, which is why it's important to talk about it and remove the shame in terms of parenting and parent guilt. And I think for me as a parent, so I have 3 children. They are 13, nearly 11, and just not long turned 1. So a wealth of different ages. All of them feel angry. Every child does. And I think, my toddler who's angry looks slightly different at the moment to my teenager who's angry. And I
imagine he's not slamming doors quite yet.
No, my eldest is doing all the slamming.
Oh, I remember that stage very well.
All the eye rolling.
Yeah. It's interesting though, isn't it? Because I think when I was brought up, anger was seen as something negative and that you shouldn't feel. And the aim was always to stop the anger.
Stop it, shut it down, don't feel it.
Yeah, but what that meant was I didn't understand. And I remember one time in particular, and this is just one time, I could think of many, of me as a teenager where I absolutely trashed my bedroom. So I remember I got the drawers out of my furniture. I was throwing them around. It was carnage. It wasn't nice. I was so dysregulated because I was so hurt. I was so frightened. I was so worried, and I didn't understand what was happening to me. And in that moment with that anger, I can remember now afterwards just looking around and looking at my parents and my then boyfriend at the time. And I remember saying, like, there's no coming back from this, is there?
It feels so big.
Yeah, I genuinely thought, this is it. My life is over. And that makes me so sad because actually I know what was going on underneath all of that for me now as an adult, retrospectively looking back. But how many children do we see with those kind of big emotional outbursts, or teenagers? And we just try and shut that down and tell them to calm down without actually helping them to reflect and think about what might be going on underneath the surface.
That's it. I think for us as parents, it's uncomfortable seeing our children feel.
Yeah.
It's uncomfortable seeing them properly empty out that anger, isn't it?
I emptied that out.
Me too. In my teenage years, me too. Which, interestingly, I think as an adult, I struggle to process anger because I've never been given that experience and opportunity to fully empty that out. So my anger very, very quickly becomes upset and I get quite tearful, which is an interesting side point. But I think naturally as parents, we want to try and fix it. We want to stop it. And we can't. And that's what's uncomfortable. When we're seeing our children flip their lid, we very quickly feel like our own emotions are getting up to the surface and there's an eruption and a volcano. And I think this comes down to allowing them to feel it, allowing them to let it out. There's 6 stages of an anger outburst, isn't there?
Yeah.
I never knew this as a parent.
No, and I never knew. We never knew it as a parent, and we never knew it as children either. But yeah, that first point kind of the trigger. So what's making us angry? What is it? And it can be hard for us to understand what our child's trigger is. And I think often when we're talking to parents, they'll say it comes from nowhere. We used to call it switch mode in our house.
I like
But
that.
there will be a trigger, but it's working out what that is. And that can take a little bit of reflection and curiosity. But if you can understand a child's triggers, then you can support them at that stage. But often they can go
Escalate.
unnoticed, and it goes into that escalation stage. And that's where you're starting to see those kind of low level challenging behaviors, challenging to us, around maybe they become a little bit more whiny, a bit more attention, needing a bit more attention, sorry. So mom, 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 dad, dad, dad. Or maybe they were quite focused on a task and all of a sudden they come a bit fidgety. They start to maybe antagonize another child in their space, start to push boundaries and limits a little bit. Now, because we're so busy as parents, that's often the stage we just try and say, stop that now, stop that.
Yeah. Shut it down, please.
And try and move on. Whereas actually that's the point where we want to really ideally be going in and saying, I've noticed that you are
Need a
finished
bit
with
of
that task
connection.
now. Let's go for a walk, or redirecting them.
Yeah.
But then it hits into that crisis point. And when it hits crisis stage, that's when you've got to find a way to let them empty that out fully, because you can't go backwards from that point. You have to, for me, go through all of those stages. So at that point, it is about safety, isn't it? And making sure they're safe, other people are safe. The broken record technique that we talk about, so repeating small, simple statements that reassure them that they're normal, that this is going to pass. I see you, you're safe, I'm here. Hopefully regulating yourself in that moment, because it's really difficult.
I think that's one of the hardest things, isn't it? And it's understanding, because like we were saying, that's triggered something in us as well. When we're seeing our children upset, that's making us upset and ultimately making us feel out of control of a situation.
Yes.
That's huge. So exactly what you said, knowing and understanding our triggers is key. Being able to have things in place that you can step away, and that is okay. That is okay that you can step away as long as they're safe.
It is okay to step away from a dysregulated child, like you said, as long as they're
safe,
and model and explain why. Yeah, not putting the blame on them, saying I need to step away because you're angry and you're making me feel this way, but saying I'm feeling a bit uncomfortable, I need to take some time away, I love you, I'll be back. And there's not one size fits all. We say it all the time, but it's because it's true. There are some children that want you and follow you around the house when they're angry and you need space, and there's some others that want nothing to do with you, and there's others that are in the middle. But yeah, there's lots of things that you can do at that crisis point, but it does always start with us as the parent, unfortunately, and that's the hard reality.
Meeting chaos with your calm.
Yeah.
That is hard to do, but one of the biggest tips that we can give you, because
don't throw petrol on the fire.
Don't throw petrol on the fire, which is difficult, but also when meeting them with your calm, you're modeling how to respond to anger.
Yeah.
So they are looking at us all the time as parents to feel emotionally contained, to feel like we've got this for them, to feel like and know that we're in control in that situation.
They feel
so
unsafe, don't
frightened.
they? Yeah, they feel unsafe. So they're looking to us. And if we're looking like this is unsafe and I need to make it stop immediately, that terrifies me even more. I can think of a few times as a parent that I've really flipped my lid, lost it, and my children are adults now. But I remember apologizing for 2 occasions that I can really think of to my eldest, and I apologized quite recently, and I said, I just wish I'd have handled that differently. I don't know if you remember it. And even now, all these years later in his 20s, it's not too late to go back and share that. And I think that's really healing, actually, for a child.
And that's modeling again.
It is, absolutely. But then they move through that crisis stage then, and you're starting to see some of that energy leave their body a little bit. And that's when they're entering into that kind of recovery stage.
Mm.
Now, in that recovery stage is not where you go in trying to talk about what's happened, what's right, what's not. It's just about giving them a space to allow that adrenaline and cortisol to safely leave their body. So I like low demand activities at that point,
Lovely.
threading paper clips, loom bands, building with Lego, colouring, sticker books, something low demand that can just gently help them move through the rest of that I suppose release some of that emotional energy. The post episode realization is that fifth stage where all of a sudden they can really reflect and think back on what's happened, and a lot of the time that is where the shame comes in, which is what we want to eliminate. We don't want children to feel ashamed. We don't want them to think that they are the problem. We want them to acknowledge the problem as being the problem, not them.
The anger is the anger.
Yeah.
And it
They're not
is
the
just
anger.
an emotion. They're not the anger. And a lot of our young people, particularly ones that we see in service at Bridge the Gap, they kind of feel that they're an angry person, and they label themselves, and whether that's come from a school environment as well, that's worth reflecting on. I think a child very quickly becomes the label and the name that we give them and ascribe to them.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to reflect on and support them in that stage, to know that, you know, I love you. Yes, you've got angry. That's normal. It's natural. Anger is normal. And remove that shame completely from the mix, because, yeah, if we feel ashamed of our feelings, then where does that lead?
Yeah, and then it becomes it's a vicious circle, isn't it? Because you see so many children who don't want to talk about their anger and what happened after the event, but often it's because of the shame,
Yeah.
sort of having been unintentionally, for the most part, being fueled. And the follow-up, which is the final stage, needs to be done in a consistent, predictable way, so that feels a safe space for them to explore what happened.
That's
And that
actually probably one of the most important stages that's often hugely missed,
or
isn't
it's
it?
tried to be done too soon.
Yes, that definitely. So the repair and the reparation
Yeah.
is just key, because actually that takes shame out the
Yeah.
equation. They are already feeling that. They're already feeling uncomfortable for having got angry.
Yeah.
If we are
Even if they're not
adding,
showing you.
even if they're not showing us, if we are then adding in a punishment to that, or a consequence to that, which is another whole podcast in itself, then they are potentially going to then think, oh, I'm bad.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have felt that.
And instead, we want them to be able to, over time, take accountability, be able to feel guilt and know what to do with guilt, because guilt is a healthy emotion. It's, it's very different to shame. It's outward facing. So it's about, how do I make amends, rather than I'm a bad person and nothing good's ever going to come from this. I can't move forward. But yeah, in that post episode realization, that fifth stage, you'll often see lots of crying, shaking, or needing lots of connection with you as an adult, or might be so embarrassed they want to hide away and not
Well, a lot of
show
saying
anyone.
sorry.
Yeah,
See
sorry,
that a
sorry,
lot
sorry.
with my daughter in particular. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have done that. I'm so sorry. Like all of that, to excess, it feels like. And I know a lot of children will do that. And that again comes back to that, then the sixth stage, doesn't it? To repair and acknowledge that, yes, we've felt anger, and then the anger has passed.
Yeah. But in that fifth stage, don't try and go in with that repair. Give that fifth stage enough time. If they want connection with you, give it them. Now's not the time to talk about what they did, how they need to make amends for anything that's happened. That's just about, it's an emotion, it's past, I get it, I love you.
Yeah.
It's all about
It's
that.
powerful.
And that follow-up stage, like we say, it's about having a predictable kind of routine to follow, so that child knows that space is about learning and not about judgment. So we've got really great, on our parent platform actually, that I created a resource that is all about repair, and having a template to be able to talk through that with them. So where I was, what I was feeling, what happened, how did I respond, what do I want to practice for next time? Practice being the key word, because it does take practice. And just because they've written it down on a piece of paper does not mean that's going to happen next time. But
Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing?
it'd be easy. But what would I like to practice,
Yeah.
for difficult emotions when they arise next time? And when you're looking at the where was I, how was I feeling, what you're trying to do is help them understand the context
And the trigger.
behind the trigger. And if you aren't able to have those conversations because they feel ashamed, so they're avoiding them, you're missing opportunity to understand what's going on underneath that, aren't you? And then
Definitely.
and then always sharing something really positive about the child at the end of
Oh,
that,
that's
and
just
for
so
them to
lovely.
just repair, giving them a chance to give you a hug, to say sorry. And
Yeah.
I think it's always interesting when I think back to my parenting back in the early noughties, and how if my child was upset, I'd probably just make them say sorry in the here and now, but they weren't really sorry because they were still in the emotion they were feeling.
That's
So that
it.
was more about a box tick for me, rather
Mm.
than letting them go through the full process
It's
and teaching them what
interesting.
sorry feels like for them.
It's interesting where that comes from. And I think a lot of that is potentially just society, isn't
Yeah.
it? But also, if you're in a situation, so you're with other parents, for example, I think a lot of that comes from fear of judgment.
Oh,
And, oh,
hugely.
I should be making my child say sorry, or I should be, bringing two children together to be able to navigate a situation and me being involved in that. I think we're just fed all these ideas from society that makes it harder and harder to actually reflect on what is right for the child or most helpful for the child. Two tips that I wanted to kind of share, one of which is when we're at that crisis stage and we are emptying out all of that anger, or we're supporting our child to. We talk about this quite a bit at Bridge the Gap, and I think you don't know it as a parent. So, brainstem calmer activities is rhythmic, repetitive, physical activities that can aid literally the release of that feeling. It's calming our brainstem
That's great for escalation stage, I
as
would
well.
say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So, giving them things like snapping spaghetti.
Yeah.
That was a game changer for us in our
Yeah.
household. We still use that, snapping spaghetti or bouncing
Dried
a ball.
spaghetti,
Yeah,
not cooked
dry
spaghetti.
spaghetti,
That
not
won't
cooked.
work.
Bouncing a ball, or, if it's safe to do so, throwing bean bags across the room, that sort of
Yeah.
thing, where you're just releasing some of that energy in a safe capacity.
Whatever they naturally do when they're feeling that anger is likely to be the clue for you as a parent to
Mm,
see what coping tool or skill you could teach that could be
that's
helpful
it.
for them.
So
Um,
how they're naturally regulating,
yeah,
isn't it?
because that's what they're trying to do.
And then the second tip leads on from this, is that anything we want to introduce as a coping strategy, sadly, we have to model ourselves
Yeah, we do.
and practice a lot.
Oh my gosh, we do.
So, if we want our child to scribble and get their anger out on a piece of paper, then a great tip is to actually you model that and
Yeah.
you do that, and incidentally be talking about that emotion and how it feels in your body, releasing then through a coping strategy. That's teaching them more than anything we tell them.
Yeah. They're skills. And we don't just have those skills. We
No.
are born with different strengths and talents. And I strongly believe skills are things we teach children over time. And coping skills are something that I was never taught about
No.
as a child.
Same.
And it breaks my heart to think that actually I didn't for my eldest, really, because
Mm,
it just wasn't, we didn't talk about this stuff then. But in terms of mental health, and this is why we talk about parenting around at Bridge the Gap, because we're looking at the whole child
mm,
and how all of these really foundational stages of development and understanding of emotions are so key for protecting long-term mental health. If you have the skills and you've been taught them, then over time you're able to use them. It doesn't happen overnight. You do not start children at school and put a GCSE maths paper in front of them we teach them all of those skills throughout their time in education, and it's exactly the same for emotions. And if only I'd have had that as a parent, yes, initially, but also as a human myself. It was
Yeah, it's powerful, isn't it? So, we have a webinar coming up, as we said at the start of this podcast, on responding to anger. So, do check that out. That webinar will also be added to our Beam platform for you to access as well.
Yeah, it's just £8.99 and you get the recording for 30 days afterwards. So it's a great webinar. Please share it with your friends and we will share more of our experiences, more tips, and offer a really non-judgmental space for you to explore whatever is going on for you and your child at the moment.